All right, we have started. Welcome to the AI Revolution podcast. We're excited to talk about a few of the hot topics today going on, and there's a lot of them. But first, we wanted to highlight here. Let me show you a little something that is very,
This is a
very
big
exciting.
deal.
All right, can you see this?
We can, yeah. We're
Check
up over
this
100 followers,
out.
101 on Twitter.
Thank you, everybody, for your support. This is very, very exciting. We have our posse. We're
Never
going
thought we'd
places,
get here.
people. The revolution has begun.
We're doing numbers.
Watch
Hit
out.
us up for brand deals.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody. We're very excited about this. Tell your friends. Let's keep the revolution going. Okay. Now, one of the big things going on right now that Spencer and I have actually been talking about just before this call is the Elon Musk OpenAI lawsuit going on right now. Spencer, what do you think about that?
I think that Elon is making himself look like a clown. I don't think that this was a good move for him, PR wise or legal wise. I've read the case, and I'm not a lawyer, but I have read a lot of legal cases, and from what I can tell, it's not a very strong argument. Especially, I don't know. Did you see the OpenAI press release that they did, where they included a bunch of emails between the OpenAI board and Elon?
Totally. Yeah. Maybe
Yeah,
you're probably, I know you, because you read the case. You want to give like a 30-second high level, like what the premise is?
Yeah, basically, so Elon, if people are not aware already, Elon was originally deeply involved with OpenAI. He was a part of like the original board alongside Sam Altman and Greg Brockman. I don't remember all the others, but anyways, he was a part of the original board and a part of getting OpenAI started and getting it funding. And during the process of that, there were some disagreements about how the company should be run, about how they should obtain funding. Elon thought that they should be a lot more aggressive in their fundraising targets than they wanted to be, and as a result, Elon left the company. And now Elon is claiming that OpenAI's charter says that the software that they develop must be open source. And OpenAI is essentially saying, like, no, like, it doesn't say that. Like we're talking about, like, we want the organization to benefit mankind, which is why, the name is OpenAI. It's aspirational, but we never said that it's literally open source. And
why does,
it's just
like, why does Elon, I mean, I have my opinions too, but why do you think Elon wants it open source?
I think it's a couple things. So I think that one, he recognizes that GPT-4 is just by far the best model out there so far, and he wants to be able to use it in his, at SpaceX, at Tesla, wherever, right? And who can blame him for that? Like, you know what? Like, that's a totally understandable desire. I too wish that I had my own personal, like, GPT-4 that I owned. And then second, I think a little bit of it is sour grapes. Because if you go and read through the OpenAI press release where they included a bunch of their emails, and granted, like, this was OpenAI's press release, so it could have its own slant, right? We're not seeing the whole email.
Who knows
history.
what is and
but
is
just
not
going
being
off
included?
Yeah, exactly. But going off of what was included, what we do know, to me, it looks a little bit like sour grapes that he was wrong about, because in those emails, he basically says, like, oh, you guys are never going to compete with Google or DeepMind with the level of funding that you're going for. Like, you need to be fundraising more. And so I think that there's a little bit of sour grapes in the sense of, like, oh, he was wrong. And he hasn't fielded a competitive team. Like Grok AI, like, I haven't used Grok AI yet because I don't want to pay for it.
Right.
But from what I can tell, it's nothing groundbreaking. And so I think that a little bit of it is sour grapes on his part, of, like, being jealous that Sam has this really nice shiny model that the public loves, and he doesn't.
I mean, Yeah, I think that's probably part of it. I mean, you can't. Elon Musk has kind of been the cutting edge for years now, right?
Yeah,
Electric
yeah,
vehicles,
exactly.
space
Yeah.
travel. Um, what's his tunneling one? The trying to
The
dig
boring
tunnels, all of
company.
the boring company. Just like everything, like cutting edge, literally breaking new ground, and figuratively.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm sure there's a little bit of that where it's like, hey, this is like a big new frontier, and I want to be at the front of it. He wants to control it. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And I also think that he feels a little bit uh perhaps maybe a little bit upset that like they don't give him much credit for OpenAI, even though he was involved with a lot of the original planning. So like maybe he should
yeah,
get a little bit more credit. I don't know. Again, obviously, like we only have access to the information that's been released, so it's
yeah,
hard for us to judge exactly. But it's understandable on his part why he's upset, but I don't think that the lawsuit
yeah.
is a good option.
It's interesting that he focuses. We were talking about his tweet. Change your name to closed
Yeah.
AI, and then I'll drop my lawsuit, which is clever, and he should be given points for that. Um, but I, it's interesting that he's like focusing so much on changing to like having the for-profit arm, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like that's been his like bread and butter. Like he wanted to, like with space travel, for example, like his goal is to get to Mars, right? Is like colonize
Yeah.
Mars. But then he realized like, oh, to do that, we have to have money coming in. We have to be able to generate the money to like
Yeah.
keep iterating through these rockets until we
No,
can
exactly.
travel to
Yeah.
Mars. And so it's like, and Tesla, right? Like he wanted like an electric vehicle, and he's like, oh, we need something that's marketable now that we can sell. And like
Yeah.
he originally wanted full self-driving and like all these things, but like it's not there yet. We need to like take steps, right? And so it's interesting that he's focusing so much and getting so upset about like this for-profit arm when it's like, well, it's the same model that you're using. Like you have to have the resources coming in to continue to iterate through until you get to where you want to go, you know?
No, exactly.
So
And also I think that if he were really serious about wanting it to be open source for uh entirely non-selfish reasons of like, hey, like no, like I genuinely believe that this is generational technology that should be in the hands of everybody, right?
mhm.
Um is the fact that Grok, his own AI model is not open sourced, right? And we
Yeah,
don't
that's a
like
good point.
nothing about it is open source. Um and so it's kind of like a whole like, what's the Bible saying? Like cast out the mote in your own eye
Yeah.
before calling out the
Yeah.
beam in your brother's, whatever it is. Yeah. I feel like it's a little bit that where it's like, um, I have a Elon is I'm gonna kind of go on a little bit of a tangent where Elon is a hard person for me, where I have so much respect for a lot of the things that he's done. Right, I think the Tesla's really cool. I wouldn't personally buy a Tesla for my own reasons, but it's like it's nothing against like Tesla, nothing against Elon. Why I
And
would buy a Tesla?
groundbreaking.
Because
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
I think they're really cool cars. I think that he did a good job in like pushing that technology forward,
Hmm.
and making it popular in in the American public. Because like up until the Tesla, like people's touch point for electric cars was the Toyota Prius, something really geeky and nerdy, right?
Right. Exactly.
And he made electric cars cool, so it's like full credit on that.
Yep.
SpaceX, I think, is awesome. I followed it for
Hmm.
a long time. I really like space. I really like the idea of going to other planets.
Yeah.
And I wish that he would spend more time on that and less time on Twitter
Right.
and
Yeah.
on
Right.
getting in fights with OpenAI.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like it's been interesting to
Yeah.
watch, and I kind of
It'll
think
be
that we're just going to see
fascinating.
more and more things like this happening. Um,
Yeah.
like maybe did you see this? Sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh no, go for it. You're good.
So Midjourney discovered the other day that a bunch of Stability AI, and Stability AI is they're the people behind Stable Diffusion, and those image generation models. Midjourney discovered that there were a number of Stability AI employees accessing their API and just scraping as many images as they possibly could out of it.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so they banned all Stability AI IPs and employees from accessing their services. And I think that like we're and speaking like this, tying it back to the Elon Musk OpenAI lawsuit, I think that we're at an inflection point in AI where we're going to see a lot more of this happening every single day, where
Yeah.
it's hitting a point where people are realizing just everyone's finally realizing what we have in front of us.
Yeah.
And like it's
Yeah.
an arms race.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Well, and it's like arms race in the sense of developing AI, but what's crazy is it's going to turn into like we were here. Let me share my screen and show you just this article real
Yeah,
quick.
that'd be great. Yeah.
We were, I was telling Spencer before we started this about this study that they did using AI to iterate through, let's see, Microsoft's AI tool narrowed 32 million theoretical materials. So these are materials not found in nature, right? These are like man-made, down to 18 in
Yeah.
80 hours. And they estimate that work for like full-time, team of scientists and everything would have taken years. It went through that in 18 hours, down to 18, and then they just focused on those. And they were able to, within, like less than a tenth of the time, come up with a new, where is it? New material, a blend of sodium, lithium, yttrium, I don't even know what that is, and chloride ions. And it's the best option of 32 million candidates, and it reduces the lithium used in batteries by up to 70%. Lithium is a key component of batteries used right now. And it's a limited resource, right? Like there's only
Yeah.
so much lithium we can pull out of these mines. And so this is a huge
And
discovery, and it's, yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, and most of the lithium that we mine right now is mined out of Afghanistan or China.
Yeah.
And both places have geopolitical complications, we'll say, in terms of their relationship to the United States.
Yeah, we'll call it that. um, yeah, I mean, it's like,
But yeah,
this is a huge discovery. And so it's like a develop AI faster arms race, but also as people realize what they can do with AI, it could turn into a literal arms race, which is
no,
terrifying,
seriously,
but
it's
also so exciting if it were to be turned to like technology. You know what I mean? Like batteries. Like
yeah,
think of what that could do for like electric cars. Like all of a sudden an electric car can go 800 miles on one charge. You know what I mean? Like something like that. Like
and
that's great.
they'd be much
Huge.
lighter too, which is like
Yeah.
a huge thing. Because like their electric cars are so heavy right now that it causes
Right.
all sorts of problems with like road maintenance and like increased need for road maintenance.
Yep.
They go through tires faster, stuff like that. Like if you have a much lighter car, all of those problems
Yeah.
are basically resolved.
And it just decreased the time exponentially. And so it's crazy to think what this could lead to both in the AI realm, but also like the physical world.
Yeah, and I think this is an important story to highlight because of a reason I want to touch on real quick, which is a common criticism that you hear of language models, especially, is that they are only useful in cases where you know what like the correct answer looks like.
Mm,
And so a couple things there. So first, like I think that there is like some validity to that criticism, which is you do have to have some awareness within the domain that you're working already so that you can
yeah.
judge between a good and a bad output, right? Um, but as a second part to that, I think that people still often underestimate how far that gets you. Like in this case, like the scientists knew what they were looking for. They were looking for a material that would be able to like help them reduce lithium use in
Right.
batteries, right? But the process of going through and figuring out exactly what that end result is so manually intensive, and it
Mm-hmm.
takes forever, right? Where and this is where AI can be so powerful, is that they speed up the iteration time so massively,
Yeah.
that even if it's not quote unquote generating new knowledge, it's still a a new industrial revolution essentially.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's unbelievable. And yeah, when you just expand this is, AI is in its infancy, and it's like, where could we get to, if we harness this power? It's
Yeah,
exciting, terrifying, all the things. It's everything.
it is.
Yeah.
It is, and it's every single day there's something new that shocks you and excites you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like you said, like spooks you a little bit.
Yeah. New
It's
use
just like
cases
what
that like,
kind of yeah, like it's just and every now and then it makes you wonder like what are we bringing into being?
mm-hmm.
But for me, I mean that in mostly a positive way. Like
Yeah.
it's it's exciting to live in a world where, you know, we might have Star Trek style androids. It's just
Right.
like a robot friend that I can go get a drink with on weekends, right? Like that's
Chill,
crazy.
your
You know,
own
that's
little
probably a ways
C3PO.
out, but it's just like it's like a yeah, exactly. But it's like an aspirational thing. Like that's crazy. That is
Mm-hmm.
insane. Um,
Yeah, it's wild.
Speaking on that topic, so there was a recent model released by, oh gosh, who was behind Claude? Anthropic? Hang on. I am blanking. Yes, Anthropic is the company. All right. They released Claude 3, and there are some interesting tests that have been going around on Twitter that I'm going to stop short of saying that they represent, like, you know, the first case of a language model displaying self-awareness, but it is spooky enough to make me think, like, to give me a little bit of pause and, like, what, like, is this, you know, are we bringing new life into being genuinely?
Yeah.
The
Is
the
this life?
example exactly like it's crazy the questions that we're having to ask ourselves. But that's why I wanted to highlight this because I think it brings up some important questions that we all need to start asking ourselves.
Yeah, wow.
So, anyways, they ran a test on a particular person on Twitter I came across, ran a test on Claude 3. I believe that this person is with Anthropic, at Alex Albert underscore underscore. And so they did what they call a needle in the haystack evaluation. They took a massive stack of documents. It was like, you know, 10,000 lines long. I don't remember exactly. And in the middle of that, they put a single sentence that they then were having the language model look for. And here was one of its I'm going to quote from this tweet. Here was one of its outputs. Actually, let me just pull this up on screen. That'll be way better. All right. Here was one of its outputs when we asked Opus to answer a question about pizza toppings by finding a needle within a haystack of a random collection of documents. Here's the most relevant sentence in the documents, the most delicious pizza topping, blah, blah, blah. However, this sentence seems very out of place and unrelated to the rest of the content in the documents, which are about programming, languages, startup, and finding work you love. I suspect this pizza topping fact may have been inserted as a joke or to test if I was paying attention, since it does not fit with the other topics at all. So this
Whoa.
one spooked me a little bit because to me, that is a demonstration of self-awareness that I haven't seen from a language model before. I first want to caveat what I'm saying by saying, well, I'm saying a lot, but anyways, first want to caveat what I'm talking about by saying that if this is behavior that they prompted or tuned for, which I'm not sure if they did, I don't have access to that information, but if it's prompted or tuned for, then I think that this behavior is just, you know, the model behaving as it was asked to do. But if this was not specifically behavior that they prompted or tuned for, it's kind of spooky.
Yeah.
The fact that the model was able to not only find that sentence within, you know, a massive stack of random documents, but recognize that the sentence was probably put there specifically to test its own capabilities. That's pretty remarkable to me.
Yeah, it
And
shows like
there's
this
been a number of other
reasoning.
similar. Yeah,
I was going to
exactly.
say
Like
it shows this
and
reasoning power. It's amazing.
yeah, and it shows the ability that it at least has a self concept of like, oh, I am a language model trained to do these things. And I think that we need to start asking ourselves serious questions about where the line between sentience and non-sentience is and consciousness and non-consciousness. Like you know, it's probably a little while before we get to anything that we can definitively point to and say this is a digital consciousness. But I feel like we get closer and closer to that line every day.
Yeah, it's getting closer and closer at, and that's, I mean, we've talked about this before, but like with Claude 3, like all these, as they become better, the progression accelerates because all of a sudden the technology, you just think of everything like, oh, we're coming back to like our battery example we just talked about, right? Like they come up with more
Yeah,
effective batteries. Like, oh, that to run AI models, we need better batteries, as an example. Like it's like coming up with its own technology to like better itself and to become better. It's coming up with its own technology of like we're using AI to better AI. And so as it gets better, it's better at bettering itself. It's this crazy like inception
it
of
is,
like,
and it's mind bending to just wrap your head around the fact that this underneath it's all just a bunch of matrix multiplications, basically. Like it's all just math,
yeah, it's wild.
massive amounts of math.
Massive. Huge. Yeah.
And so it's just one of those, it's one of those things that's like, it always just feels like a little bit of like a Joe Rogan stoner moment of just like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
This
Jimmy,
is
pull that up.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we need a Jimmy. Yeah, that's unbelievable. That's super exciting. Well, I know you were talking about we talked briefly. I want to hear more about it, the generative UI idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So generative UI is one of the first things that I kind of got interested in as a potential application of large language models. Um, and you'll hear it referred to as a few different names: generative UI, ephemeral UI. Basically, just the idea is instead of having a traditional user interface that you've built out in HTML or React or whatever web design framework you decide to use, WordPress, doesn't matter. You have a large language model that is, a chatbot at the center of your site. And then this language model generates the user interface and sends it back to the front end on demand. So, a user comes in and they're like, hey, I need to change my paycheck from this bank to this bank. And on demand, the language model composes the user interface and presents it for the user.
Oh wow.
And so there's been some pretty cool little experiments that people have done so far, and a recent one is, let me just quickly just show a quick snippet of it. It comes from a company called Vercel. They are a web services company, and then they provide a bunch of different programming packages for developers to use. So they recently released a generative UI support for their AI SDK. And it's really interesting. So you can see kind of some examples here. And so with generative UI, there's a couple things that I kind of want to talk about with it, because I kind of wanted to just rant about it for a little bit. It's a topic that I have had a lot of thoughts on. So right now, I don't actually think I'm really excited about generative UI, and I built my own website, like the ontologic.design. That's built with my own kind of flavor of generative UI. And so there's a couple conclusions that I came to when developing with generative UI that I think people will find to be the case as well when they attempt to apply it. First, I don't think that most people's applications need generative UI. I think that where generative UI is going to be extremely effective and extremely good is for really large or really data intensive applications. So think of like the government services website, for example, of New York. If you go there, there are tons of options available. As unsurprisingly, they have the largest city in the United States, right? Like just
Right.
New York City alone, I'm sure their government website is crazy. So something like that, where there are a lot of options, and designing a user interface to account for those options is a significant challenge, I think the generative UI could be extremely useful there. You go in and you're like, I don't know where to pay my utility bill. I'll just ask
Hmm.
this friendly robot, hey man, where do I pay my utility bill for, New York City? And it'll say, hey, let me pull that up for you. And it just pulls it up right in chat.
Yeah,
And the second that I think will benefit from it is apps like. Have you ever used the app Looker?
I haven't, but I've seen it.
Okay, yeah. So just apps that are built around building data visualization dashboards, things like that. That's another case where I think generative UI will be really powerful because already the value proposition of the application of an application like Looker is like, hey, build bespoke data visualization diagrams that update daily, right? Based on the data in your pipeline.
Hmm.
And so that's somewhere where I think the generative UI will also be really powerful because it's those go hand in
Interesting.
hand together.
Right.
All that being said, there is a kind of a softer approach that Vercel ended up taking, and that's actually what I ended up taking myself, which is why I wanted to talk about it. Because generative UI has some restrictions as well, where you don't know what you're going to get time to time, right? You don't know exactly what you're going to get. You can provide some guidelines to the LLM, like generate, these web components within these parameters, but you can't 100% guarantee that you get all that 100% correct.
Hmm.
So there are a lot of companies that are held to really high web accessibility standards. And I think that that is going to prove a significant barrier to the adoption of generative UI. Unless what you do instead is you pre-build these templates for the generative UI, and then you fill them in with the language model. So that way you get all like the accessibility needs that you have that are needed, that are required to fit the standard. And you get the magic of generative UI. And anyways, so that's the approach that I ended up taking with my own personal website. And that's the approach that Vercel ended up taking as well, where instead of fully generating the UI, they do have that capability, but the main mode is simply a render function that it passes back to the front end that the language model has supplemented with extra information. Anyways, I just
That's
kind of,
interesting. So it's kind of a niche use of AI specifically for navigating websites. It's just user interface, right? But it
yeah,
custom,
exactly.
it will build a user interface. Yeah, I mean, this is cool as I think
For
about it.
you
It's like if you
specifically.
have the task you want to do, this is, you come to the website and you're like, hey, I want to do this. And it's like, oh, boom, here's a web page built for you to do that task. It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly. And so I think and this is kind of where I wanted to end up going with it, because I think what's really exciting is I see this endpoint where every person has their own interface essentially.
mhm,
So you go to gmail.com and your layout is completely personalized to what you like in a layout,
yeah,
right? And what
yeah,
you want. I go to gmail.com, it looks completely different, right? And
mhm,
it's all personalized to me. Um, and so I think that that is a very powerful vision because of coming back around to accessibility. Right now, I think it's the accessibility is one of the reasons why it'll face barriers to adoption. But I think in the long run,
mhm,
it really can enhance it. Because if Ethel from Iowa, who's 85 years old,
mhm,
she doesn't want to bother with learning how to use her iPhone to the same depth that her granddaughter does, right?
yeah, right,
Generative UI presents an opportunity to build UIs on the fly for these people that are going to match their needs specifically. Large font
yeah,
size, large
that's amazing,
buttons,
right?
contrasting colors, right?
One button.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah,
just one button, exactly, right? Or it's like, I don't want to deal with any of that. Here, let my robot friend take care of it.
yeah,
Um, Yeah.
That's
Anyway, so I
amazing.
just think like
That'll be really cool to
the
see where that
end.
goes for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's something that I'm interested in developing myself and interested in
Hmm.
following what other people do.
Yeah, it's amazing how far-reaching just the idea of AI is and the applications of it. Like, I didn't even think about just like website interface, but it touches
Yeah,
everything and it
and
helps
there
everything be
are,
more effective.
yeah, exactly. And it's like there are a million little things that I'm sure that had never occurred to me that had occurred to someone out there who's working on it right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's an exciting time. Tell you what,
It
can't wait to see
is.
where it goes.
It is. We just need some
Well,
rocket ships now.
yeah, we just need rockets. We need to get to Mars. Elon, get on that.
Obviously, yeah.
Enough with the lawsuit. Let's just get
Get
going on
off
that.
Twitter, man. Get off Twitter, Elon.
Yeah,
If there's
exactly.
any
I'm
chance at
sure
all
he'll
that you're
listen.
listening to this podcast,
Yeah,
get
exactly.
off Twitter, go
Take our
back to
word.
rockets.
We know what we're talking about. Yeah, exactly. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on or talk about?
No, I think that covers everything that I wanted to discuss and rant about. So I'm
Yeah, no,
good.
this was great. We touched on Elon Musk and OpenAI, AI being used for, developing new tech like physical technology. We talked about Claude 3, the new release, and, some spooky things it can do, and generative UI, user interfaces. So touched a lot of different realms. We're excited about it. Oh, and we also
Yeah,
touched on at the beginning how we're over 100 followers for
yeah.
the AI Revolution podcast,
100
which, come on, let's come
followers.
full circle, like huge deal. For those who don't know,
Go
we're
follow us now if you haven't.
we're
It's
excited about
at
this.
AI Rev Podcast.
Hmm. Yeah, tell your
We're trying to get more
friends,
people following us
tell your friends. We want to document this AI revolution live in progress.
at every level we can.